Two centuries separate July 4th, 1776 and July 4th, 1976. But to me, they are unified by a common ideal, the fight for freedom. I'm reminded of that parallel every year at this time. Israel and America are two bastions of liberty defending our common civilization. Tell others about the miracle of Israel. Tell them about this liberal democracy in the heart of the Middle East. No small feat. Believe me, if you look around, you can see how rare and how wonderful Israel really is. It's a high-tech superpower. It's a country that feeds the hungry, heals the sick, and helps keep people safe in Africa, Asia, and around the world. This is the real Israel. It's a strong country. Who are you with? The free people of Israel who defend the religious rights of all, or those who chop heads, those who show the greatest intolerance that we've seen since the Second World War? Choose. Are you with the free, or are you with the enslaved? If you're with the free, then you should stand proud with Israel and with the truth.
Controversy tonight swirling around one of the richest and most powerful people in the world. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg declares a new mission for his creation, suggesting that his virtual social network will seek to take the place of some real-life communities, like churches, for example. Dr. Robert Jeffress is a pastor at the First Baptist Church in Dallas and a Fox News contributor. Pastor, welcome. Good to have you here tonight.
Martha.
So he's suggesting that the kind of community that people find in places like Facebook perhaps replaces what they used to find when they went to church.
Look, God created the church. Zuckerberg created Facebook. My guess is God and the church are going to be around a lot longer than Zuckerberg and Facebook are.
Welcome back to The Big Picture. Billionaire businessman Sir Richard Branson made a post on his Virgin blog praising the United Nations for an alleged leaked document from the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. The document seemed to outline a call for the international community to decriminalize drug use and possession for personal consumption.
North Korea claims it has successfully tested its first intercontinental ballistic missile capable of hitting the United States. The missile flew higher and longer than any previous test. CBS News correspondent Mola Lingyi is in Washington with more on the U.S. response.
all cheers from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un after his country's latest missile test. This one, a potential game changer. State television reported it was a Hwasong-14 intercontinental ballistic missile, a North Korean first. U.S. officials now say all indications are that it was an ICBM. The missile flew for nearly 40 minutes, reaching an altitude of about 1,500 miles before splashing into the Sea of Japan, roughly 600 miles from the launch site. And with a potential range of 4,000 miles, it's capable of reaching Alaska.
It's not much further than that for the 10,000 miles or so that it would need to reach New York or Washington, D.C. So North Korea is on pace to have a nuclear weapon capable of reaching the continental United States.
Breaking news around the world. Tensions high over North Korea. Overnight, the U.S. and South Korea responded to the North Korean missile launch with a show of force, launching our own missiles into the sea off Korea. And the U.S. confirmed that the North Korean missile was a long-range ICBM. Crisis with North Korea, and our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, George. A very strong statement this morning from the top American commander in South Korea, saying that self-restraint is the only thing keeping the U.S. and South Korea from going to war with North Korea after its breakthrough missile launch.
This is the European Organization for Nuclear Research, CERN. CERN is home to half of the world's particle physicists and the biggest particle hunting machine that has ever been built. The Large Hadron Collider, or LHC. Inside this pipe, two beams of protons are sent hurtling around a nearly 17-mile loop before being smashed together to create subatomic particles. It recreates the conditions that existed just after the Big Bang.
The Big Bang was an explosion that happened at the beginning of the universe when all matter was created. So this is the year zero. And if we draw a line here...
From this point, the universe expanded, getting cooler, with its energy dispersing.
To where we are in the universe now, where humans exist, that's 14 billion years.
Our sun was formed 9 billion years ago, while the first stars formed over 8 billion years earlier. But the LHC is able to look even further back in time, to when all that existed were the fundamental building blocks of the universe. Particles.
CERN's Large Hadron Collider is an information powerhouse. In 2017, it's expected to generate 50 million gigabytes of data on a shared network of over 8,000 physicists. But all that information makes the collider a prime target for hackers. It was first hacked within days of becoming operational, and CERN's computer security officer told Motherboard their grid is under permanent attack from everybody. Hackers could want access to the grid for many reasons, including mining bitcoins, distributing malware, and stealing valuable user information. To combat this, CERN's cybersecurity department is developing artificial intelligence to help locate potential hackers. One researcher says there are so many ways to attack the collider that it's pointless to design software to try to detect them all. Instead, the AI will teach detection systems how to think like hackers. The AI's first job will be protecting a portion of CERN's grid used by ALICE, a project that studies collisions of lead nuclei. If successful, the technology could be applied to more grids.
In the border town of San Antonio de Táchira, Venezuelans fed up with their hardships are fleeing their country every day by foot for Colombia. They exit cars and buses, suitcases in hand, and walk toward the Simón Bolívar International Bridge and cross into the town of Cúcuta. Some are heading off into the uncertain world of those who emigrate without a work visa.
For decades, Colombians fleeing the armed conflict crossed this bridge in droves into neighboring Venezuela to seek refuge. But now, the traffic is going the other way. Every day, tens of thousands of Venezuelans walk this bridge into Colombia, seeking medical attention, buying basic goods like flour and toilet paper, or to move their entire lives across the bridge and try to start new ones in Colombia.
So the U.S. and Russia reached a deal on a ceasefire in southwest Syria ahead of President Trump and Putin's meeting. Tara Mahler is a former CIA analyst and spokesperson and senior policy advisor with the Counter-Extremism Project. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So there is some common ground there in terms of Syria and ISIS. Beyond that, though, their interests diverge a lot. What do you think of what happened today?
Sure. While I'm all for any ceasefire to try to put a stop to the violence that's happening on the ground in Syria, you're right. There are major areas of disagreement that still remain, and there are questions about any type of ceasefire. A ceasefire is only as good as the parties on the ground willing to follow it. So it remains to be seen if, in fact, the ceasefire will temporarily put a stop to the violence. And also, there are still outstanding issues here. There are significant differences of opinion with regards to Assad. The United States taking a much stronger stance against Assad than clearly Russia, who's basically supporting Assad. And then second, the United States has to put some more pressure on Russia with regards to Assad's use of chemical weapons, for example, something that Russia has turned a blind eye on.
So far this year, 3 people have been infected with the plague. The 2 most recent cases are women, a 52-year-old, the other a 62-year-old, both from Santa Fe County. The health department said the bacterial disease is given to people who come in contact with infected animals. The best way to prevent it is using flea control. We also have some tips from the State Department of Health scrolling at the bottom of your screen.
This is just one example of the terrifying conditions people here are facing. The flames have consumed homes and buildings and closed major highways.
Holy f***, feel how hot that is?
Went out in my patio and the fire was on the mountainside right behind my house. And we just kind of watched it come down the mountain.
One of the largest fires is burning in Chris Sonmore's community of Ashcroft.
Oh, it was very stressful. So my son and I packed up our motorhome and got ready to go.
Just north of Ashcroft is Cache Creek, where a fire grew from 40 hectares to 4,000 in a matter of hours.
You ever ask yourself, what would Jesus do in this particular situation? Instead of denying them, do you think maybe Jesus would have said, I don't accept this, but I'm going to love you anyways? Do you think that maybe would have had a more powerful testimony?
It still doesn't answer the question, would he have made the cake? And I don't believe he would have, because that would have contradicted the rest of the biblical teaching.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
I'm sorry, yeah. They tell me that all the time.
So you don't believe that, I just asked, what do you think Jesus would have done in that situation?
I don't believe that Jesus would have made a cake.
You don't?
If he'd have been a baker.
Oh, come on.
But he would have.
Jesus would have made the cake.
He would have come out with them. Jesus could turn water into wine. You can do whatever you want.
You can believe in the Bible and everything, but Jesus, that's a deal breaker. Jesus is going to make the cake.
But Joy, Jesus wouldn't contradict his teachings, first of all.
There is now a fourth pathway to achieving sainthood within the Catholic Church. In a letter issued Tuesday, Pope Francis announced the new way would recognize people who willingly give up their lives for others. Up until now, the only routes to sainthood were dying for the faith, living a life of heroic Christian values, or having a devout reputation. The Vatican provided some regimented criteria for this new fourth path. First, the person must freely and voluntarily offer up their life in the face of certain death. There must be a connection between the act of charity and the premature death. The individual must have lived a life filled with Christian values and had a holy reputation. And finally, there needs to be a miracle attributed to the person sacrificing their life. The miracle requirement is pretty standard for all candidates for sainthood, though those who are martyred don't need one to be beatified, which is one of the steps towards sainthood. Pope Francis has canonized a total of 850 saints during his 5 years as the head of the Catholic Church.
Now to some news just coming in. An estimated magnitude 5.8 earthquake has been detected off North Korea's eastern coast. That happened early this morning. The U.S. Geological Survey said the tremor occurred some 176 kilometers out into the East Sea at precisely 4:18 a.m. North Korea time. So that means 4:48 South Korea time. So a couple of hours ago now. We must stress, we can get quite nervous when we see some kind of seismic activity in North Korea, because it sometimes indicates they've conducted a nuclear test, but the Pentagon is saying that it does not appear that this was any kind of nuclear test. But we will have any updates on this as they develop in our later newscasts.
To its very first overseas military base in Djibouti in the Horn of Africa, and the base will be used to resupply Navy ships that are taking part in peacekeeping as well as humanitarian missions off the coasts of Yemen and Somalia in particular. Now this comes as China's rapidly modernizing military extends its global reach.
It is one of the best-selling books around the world, if not the best-selling. I would imagine
it's actually the best book of all time.
Of all time, right. And now a new museum is looking to bring the Bible's history to life.
You know, interesting fact, because there are probably more Bibles in circulation today than at any time in history. Yet, at the same time, the understanding of the Bible is at its lowest time in history.
Questions tonight. The city of Deltona says it has received a complaint over one commissioner reading Bible verses during meetings.
I read scripture and I see something that talks to my heart, and I feel that others should hear it. I share it in the meeting. I don't expound on it. I just read it and move on.
It's the most impactful book in the world, no matter which views you have of the Bible. It's the most banned book in the world. It's the most debated book in the world. It's the most burnt book in the world. And today it's still the best-selling book in the world.
An associate professor who says he's not trying to change individual beliefs.
Nice bibliography here. Wow.
Spends his time here researching one of the best-selling books of all time, the Bible.
Also, its influence on world history, culture, science, art, and literature.
After years of hard work, lots of research, 50 names made it on his final list.
There were all these little pieces of evidence around, sitting as I said, like dollar bills in a park.
But with ancient tablets about Nebuchadnezzar II, the king of Babylon, it's solid.
You've given up
at least 5 runs in 3 straight games, do you worry about being demoted at all?
Have you ever heard the story of the fiery furnace with Nebuchadnezzar? It's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they got thrown into the fiery furnace. And Nebuchadnezzar actually turned the heat up 7 times. And there's a reason that God let that happen, because He takes the most impossible scenarios to be given Him the glory and to show His mighty power. That's all I got for you.
Now, when you were talking about that discovery,
Oh yeah, it's too dramatic.
why does that make you so emotional?
It's the drama of confirmation, of realizing we have a new piece of evidence, and it echoes, it reverberates all the way back.
One section is devoted to the Bible in America, its influence on presidents and the Founding Fathers.
Do I listen to man, or do I listen to what God put in my heart? I'm going to listen to what God put in my heart to do. We're all a family. God bless.
This whole idea of the founding of America and how based it is on the Bible. And I want to read you something from Benjamin Franklin, his Constitutional Convention address on June 28, 1787. He said, "We have been assured in the sacred writings that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it." That's a direct quote from the Bible.
Right.
And he said, "I firmly believe that without His incurring aid, meaning God's aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel."
Is the dependency the Founding Fathers had on the Bible, really not necessarily based upon their theological belief, because some were had all different titles attached to them, but they did understand the principle that this country was founded upon these biblical principles, Judeo-Christian principles, and the further that we attached ourselves to them, to Benjamin Franklin's quote, the better God would sort of bless or have His hand upon us.
Too oftentimes in this fast-paced world, we're always thinking about what's tomorrow, what's next week, what's next Sunday. And so let me share this with you real quick. What does anxiety about the future bring you but only sorrow upon sorrow? Sufficient for the day is the evil thereof. It is vain and useless to conceive either grief or joy for future things, which perhaps shall never come to pass. But it's the nature of man to be deluded with such imaginations. It is the sign of a soul as yet weak to be so easily drawn away by the suggestions of the enemy. For he cares not whether it be with things true or false that he abuses or deceives you, whether he overthrow you with the love of things present or the fear of things to come. Believe in me and trust in my mercy. Believe in Jesus, believe in God, and trust in the mercies of man.
But it's not religion, organization, it's relationship. I mean, you just heard him say, listen, I have all the success in the world, but really it's my relationship with Christ and my faith that is the foundation, because one day he will retire, one day he will get old, one day all this, and there'll be a whole new team. We'll know none of those guys, and it all passes. So time goes by, but the time on earth is this short. can imagine a rope going around the earth as the length of your existence, your time on earth is like that much to that rope. This is so quick.